Welcome to the Oneal Perspective, Politics, Power, and Policy, where we break down the latest in politics, dive deep into forces shaping our society, and uncover the policies that will make it all happen. Your host, Curtis Oneal, is here to educate, enlighten, and entertain as we explore the world of politics with clarity and insight. Whether you're a political junkie or just trying to be informed, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Oneal Perspective, the show where we cut through the noise, bypass the political spin, and deliver straight, unfiltered truth about the issues that are shaping our world today, especially issues that impact Black and Brown communities. I am your host, Curtis Oneal, and it is my honor and focus to provide perspectives from both sides of the aisle. I don't want to talk from a Democratic perspective, nor am I going to focus on Republican perspectives. I consider myself, family, a free thinker. And so therefore it is my host to help to educate, to enlighten, and maybe even entertain on some of today's political hot topics. Today we're going to go ahead and dive into a conversation that everyone seems to have an opinion on. If you're watching the TV, you see it. If you're watching CNN, you see it. If you're watching Fox News or even legacy media, NBC, ABC, CBS, you're seeing it. And that particular topic is really about immigration. And so it's my hope for us to try to unpack some of this stuff and to try to actually understand the whole conversation around immigration, asylum, and the real winners and losers in our current immigration system. So depending on who you ask, of course, we know that the immigration debate falls into two particular extremes, right? Some argue for open borders, claiming that it's the compassionate path forward. And we know that those individuals that argue that, it seems to be the Democrats and the far left, right? While others demand for a more stricter enforcement and mass deportations. They believe that is the only way to protect American jobs, security, and we know that those individuals are the Republican Party far right. But here's the thing. Neither parties talk about and provide the full story, right? Because the conversation isn't really about, right? It isn't really about who gets in. And it really isn't about who gets out. It's really about who benefits and who suffers and what these policies really mean for our communities. So this particular episode, this is episode 2. We're going to go ahead and break down how does immigration policies affect job opportunities and wages for working class Americans. I think that's a lot of the concern there, especially around economics, right? And especially around Black and Brown communities. There's a lot of individuals that have a concern that undocumented migrants are working and create wage competitions with African American individuals, especially for low wage jobs. And so we'll definitely unpack that later on in this particular series. But also, what's the connection between immigration and the rising cost of housing? We know that there's only so much affordable housing in the United States, right? And for individuals that are in Black and Brown communities, we only know that there's so much only subsidized housing in the United States. And what's the threat to that particular housing crisis that many of us many communities find themselves into? And then how are communities more or less safe due to current immigration enforcement? We see a lot of that conversation take place, especially around the conversations with the Trump administration. Most of the Trump administration's argument has been around we want to make our communities safe. We want to get rid of those undocumented migrants that has created some particular public safety threats to the community. We probably heard about the Laken Riley incident that has taken place, and then the unfortunate incident that has taken place with the homeless woman and the Guatemalan undocumented migrant who set her on fire in the subway in New York. And so those particular things really create a lot of fear, create a lot of issues, albeit, all we know, that undocumented migrants historically have committed far less crimes than native United States citizens. But there are many in our country, in our communities that say, hey, look, we already got our share of problems. We got our issues. We don't need these particular people coming in here creating more issues. We don't need no more gangs. We got our issues with the vice lords, the black gangster disciples, the Latin kings, the North Siders, motorcycle gangs. We got our issues with all of that. We don't need no Trende Araguas. We don't need no MS-13 coming in here, right? And I get some of that. I get that conversation as well. And so how are our social services, healthcare, education, and public resources being stretched thin by the system? We know that there's only so much resources really to go around. And there's the whole conversation, right, around the America First agenda, right, being presented by the conservatives, by the Republicans. And that particular conversation says basically we need to help Americans first before we help others. And so when I hear about that, or, I'm reminded of a unfortunate story, and some of you all may have heard this story about a woman that had lost two of her children. They froze to death in Detroit. They were sleeping in a van, and my understanding is that there were somewhere around 7 individuals sleeping in the van. It was a mother, a grandmother, and then of course her children. She ended up losing a 2-year-old and a 9-year-old that had froze to death in the vehicle. And so many are left saying, why was there no resources for her, but there were resources for undocumented migrants? And so those things, when we hear those things, it creates a lot of questions and create a lot of confusion. But I think here's the issue, and this is a really big question. So the question is, who is profiting from this system? And then also, who's paying the price? Are the Democrats using undocumented migrants to bolster future votes for the Democratic Party? And are Republicans using this particular immigration conversation really in an effort to maintain cultural identity and solidarity? Many people believe that to be the case because they believe that the Republicans are using this as a platform to maintain white supremacy, especially when you add in the conversation around abolishing DEI policies. So, 2 questions, one question, 2 different perspectives, but they need to be answered, right? So today it is my hope that we can get into a couple of things before we get into those particular questions, and that is what asylum really is and who actually qualifies for it. I think that's important. I think we need to unpack that. Second is how unchecked immigration policies have really reshaped the workforce, especially for Black and brown communities. And then third, the role of politicians, corporations, and media in shaping the whole immigration narrative. Again, we can just tune into legacy media outlets such as NBC, ABC, CBS, tune into CNN and, of course, Fox News, and you will see and hear varying perspectives on this particular conversation. And depending on what you like to listen to, it can become an echo chamber, and it can sort of cloud your mind with regards to whatever you feel your perspective is. And so this whole particular episode is really to provide you with both perspectives and hopefully allow you to become a free thinker and create your own perspective. Fourth question is, and I think this is the most important one, is we want to be able to provide some type of real solutions that bring fairness security, and economic stability for everyone. And this even includes family, undocumented migrants, right? We want to make sure that everyone is treated fairly, irregardless of their particular status. But we have to do things right in this country. So can we allow for such populations to really work in the United States, especially with jobs that many American citizens do not want to work, right? I think that's also a question that we need to be able to ask. So this whole episode, hopefully you feel that it's about no spin, no bias, and hopefully I can be able to provide you with just the facts. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take a deep dive into some of this particular into this particular conversation, and so we'll go ahead and get into it right now. So, what is asylum and who actually qualifies? Again, we know that asylum is a legal protection that is designed to safeguard individuals who are facing real and immediate danger in their home countries, right? And we also are talking about people that are being targeted for what I like to think of 5 things. You think about these 5 points. Number 1, people that are being targeted for their race, right? And we think about Rwanda, for example. That was the Hutsis and the Tutsis, I believe it was, right? That particular conflict. People that were being targeted for their tribe, their ethnicity, their race, and then we'll also think about people that are being targeted for their religion, right? And then 3rd, their nationality, and then 4th, their political views, and then lastly, their membership into a specific social group. Those are the reasons that people can claim asylum, right? And that's pretty straightforward. And of course, if you're at risk of being imprisoned, torture, or even death, with regards to those particular 5 points, you can claim asylum. But here's where things get a little bit confused, right? Asylum is not really meant for those people who simply want a better job. I'll say that again. People who want a better job, people who are tired of making $1 an hour in their home country, and they want to come over here to the United States and make a minimum wage of $12, and then of course send that money back to their home country so their families can live okay. That's admirable. And I think that's most of us. And I think most of us, if we had an opportunity to go to another state to make more money and send it back home, we'll do that. But that's what asylum is not meant for. Asylum is not meant for better schools, for a better education. It's not meant for that. And it's not meant for a better life for their families, right? We talked about that with regards to economics. And when we look at that, what that really is, that's economic migration. It's not persecution. And the asylum system wasn't meant for economic migration. And I think that's where things really start to get murky. So I think that's number 1 to be able to understand. So we need to be able to understand how the asylum process works. And before I go any further, one of the things I want to say is that I have a little bit of experience with that. And for some of my podcast family, you all may know that I have a formal background in law. And then I also have a larger background experience in the law enforcement corrections field. And so I had the opportunity to work with the Department of Homeland Security and the Immigration Customs Enforcement when I worked at a ICE detention facility. Now, I know for many of you guys on the call, oh my God, this guy is he's pro deportation. He's a Republican. No. I'm neither Democrat, again, like I said, nor am I Republican. But I'm bringing that up to say that I have experience and I've seen things firsthand, both positive. I've seen some detainees come into the processing facility and that really shouldn't even have been in the United States, and it created a lot of havoc. And I've seen individuals that have been in the facility and they meant the best and wanted to do the best. I've seen individuals that come into the country and they have committed sexual assaults against children. And of course, I believe and feel that those individuals don't need to be in this country. But I've also seen where individuals that were not, although they were not born, but they were here as children, raised here in the United States, and ended up working, getting a job, and ended up somehow getting involved with a legal situation. And next thing you know, they're in the ICE detention facility, in the processing facility, and they're about to be detained. They're detained, and then they're about to be processed out and deported back to their home country. One particular story of interest that really that I think about is there was an Iranian a gentleman. He was from Iran, and I lived in I believe it was Detroit. He was here in this particular country at the age of 5, and he was a taxi driver. Ended up somehow, I think he ended up getting a DUI. They ended up bringing him to the detaining him, and then the next thing you know, they're deporting him back to his home country of Iran. Now, what's interesting is that this individual has lived in the United States since he was 5 years old. He didn't speak any Arabic, didn't speak Farsi, didn't speak any of that particular language, didn't know anything about the culture. All he knew was English and the American way of life. But anyway, they ended up deporting him back to Iran. The sad part about it is that this individual also had a chronic medical condition. And from what I understood, that he was deported in Iran, and the unfortunate part was that he ended up passing away in Iran. So those particular stories that I hear, really require us to sort of rethink our immigration policies. And I'm saying that particular story not to say that I am pro-Democrat and have leftist views, or that I'm Republican and have right-wing views. I'm saying that what we really need to do is to explore ways in which we can fix a broken system. That's what I'm saying. So that being said, I think it's important for us to sort of talk about the asylum process and how some of this works. For someone to legally claim asylum in the United States, of course, we know that they must be able to apply upon arrival, and that's whether at an official border checkpoint or after crossing the border illegally. They also must be able to prove that they have a credible fear of persecution in their home country, meaning that there must be some particular type of verifiable evidence that they are in real danger. They also may be able to go through an extensive legal process. And an unfortunate part about that, when we say legal process, ding, 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 right? We know that can be take some time. It can create years of backlog and reviews and appeals and things of that particular nature. And because of this, again, like I said before, we really need to start having conversations about how do we reduce immigration restrictions while maintaining security in this country, right? Right, that's important. We got to have both. We just can't have open borders and no security. We got to be able to have both. So how are we able to reduce some of the restrictions, reduce some of the bureaucratic red tape while maintaining security in this country? So here's the real issue. We know that the asylum system in the United States is, of course, completely overwhelmed, and it is definitely in need of an overhaul. There are hundreds of thousands of cases pending right now, leaving some genuine asylum seekers basically stuck in limbo, while others, of course, they exploit that. They exploit those loopholes in the system in an effort to gain some particular type of entry under false pretenses. Now, again, I have a personal story regarding this. I have a family member. He married a citizen. I don't want to say what particular country, but he married a citizen, and they had two children that were born here in the United States. He goes back to her home country and tried to come back over to the country, and they said, hold up, wait, where's her green card, where's her visa? So they applied for it. Well, it took for years for them to be able to get that. He had to wait in an effort to get a visa, green card. Finally, they ended up getting it, and they ended up coming back to the United States. But again, he did it the right way, right? And it's hard for, American citizens that try to do it the right way, who pay lots of money to be able to do things the right way, and then all of a sudden you look on the news and you just see people just sort of coming across the border, right? They're not doing it the right way. And so, again, we need to be able to address this particular system. So we know that some legitimate asylum seekers, of course, are waiting for years just to have their cases heard because they want to do it right. And others are basically gaming the system in an effort to get into the United States. So, what happens when the system becomes too clogged? As we know, it becomes less effective at protecting those who truly need asylum while making it easier for other people to abuse the process. And of course we know this isn't just about politics. It's really about, fixing a system that no longer functions the way in which it was intended. And it raises critical questions. Number one is, who's benefiting from some of this dysfunction? Is it businesses that exploit undocumented migrants? Is it slumlords that exploit undocumented migrants for the rent because they know that they can exploit them? And those are the conversations that we'll be getting into later on in this whole immigration series. So in episode 3, we're going to explore the key differences between asylum seekers, refugees, and undocumented migrants. Because trust me, there's a whole lot of confusion around this particular topic, right? And I want to make sure that we unpack it. I want to make sure that you, as the Oneal Perspective audience, get a good feel for what's going on. Again, it's my whole focus to be able to, as I said before, to entertain, enlighten, and educate. So again, I want to thank you all for attending today's episode of the Oneal Perspective, Politics, Power, and Policy. I hope that you learned something new. I hope that you got inspired and maybe even had a little fun along the way. I know I do. So don't forget, family, to subscribe, share, and join us the next time for more thought-provoking conversations. Until then, I want you all to stay informed, I want you to stay sharp, and I want you to stay engaged. Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of The Oneal Perspective, Politics, Power, and Policy. I hope you learned something new, got inspired, and maybe had a little fun along the way. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join us next time for more thought-provoking conversations. Until then, stay informed and stay empowered.